The battle over the battle. As the president asked Congress for a 3-year military authority to beef up our fight against ISIS, more than 7 out of 10 Americans say the president does not have a real strategy to defeat ISIS. That's why some here say it is time to declare a full-blown war to destroy these Islamic extremists and protect our way of life. Are they right? Hi, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. I'm David Asman. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus with Steve Forbes, Rich Karlgaard, Mike Ozanian, Sabrina Schaefer, John Tamny, and Rick Unger. Rich, 73% of Americans say they do not think the president has a strategy for defeating ISIS. Should we just declare war on the guys?
Number one, the American people are right. And number two, yeah, we should declare war because there has never been a better time. The burning of this Jordanian pilot is galvanizing the world, including many people in the Middle East. We've never had more economic leverage to work behind the scenes to pressure Saudi Arabia and Qatar to stop funding groups like this because we now have the upper hand in oil and gas. Now is the time, and if we don't do it, and God forbid these guys get their hand on a weapon of mass destruction or some bioweapon, we'll regret it for the rest of our lives.
John Tamny, even some libertarians are saying a clear declaration of war would cut through all of the uncertainty.
Yeah, I guess I've got Rick's slot for a second straight week, and I suppose I'm going to give a Rick kind of answer. I think this is a really bad idea once again. We, to some degree, have ISIS because we saw fit to get rid of Saddam Hussein. Why is it that we think that the third time is going to be a charm? Then after that, we've spent years on this show mocking the Obama administration's obnoxious conceit that it can create a health care market out of thin air. But when it comes to making the Middle East a tranquil place, we think that American troops can do it and that they can create Thomas Jeffersons where tyrants used to live. I think this is wholly naive and we should stay out of it.
All right. Well, Sabrina, in fairness to the president, he says that, and his people say he is stepping up his airstrikes against ISIS. Why isn't that enough?
Well, look, I mean, I understand what John's saying is that sometimes we're in the position of choosing between bad and worse, right? And that's a dangerous position to be in. But I'm disagreeing in the sense that I think we do need to do more. But part of doing more is to be very clear about what it is we're fighting and how we're going to target it. I agree. We don't want to have sort of this open-ended effort that's not delineated in any way. But the president needs to, most of this has to do with his, attitude and the positioning. What are we doing? Are we upping our intelligence? Are we working more with our allies? Or do we know who we're fighting and in which countries? This is a lot of what the American people are waiting to hear.
Rick, the president says he is out to destroy ISIS, but is he doing enough to destroy ISIS?
The problem, and again, like every other argument in our country these days, it degrades into he's horrible, he's good, whatever. The president had a strategy at the outset. It hasn't worked. The idea was to degrade ISIS. They had about 20,000 troops at that point. Conservative estimates now say maybe 200,000 troops. The degrading part didn't work out. So we have to move to a new strategy of destroying. All-out war, problematic because we can't declare war within Syria.
Well, Steve, going back to that poll, 60% of Americans say it's going to take ground troops to defeat ISIS. Only 23% say airstrikes alone will do it. And even Chuck Hagel, the outgoing Secretary of Defense, has publicly said that airstrikes alone are not going to do it. Take a listen.
No one is under any illusions, that airstrikes alone will destroy ISIL.
So how about a declaration of war, Steve?
Well, it's not so much a declaration of war. The president has the authority to take action now. The fact is he really doesn't want to take a lot of action. He should realize and have a strategy where we're going to have to use now ground troops. We're going to have to do more coordination with countries like Jordan and Saudi Arabia. And this resolution that he put before Congress is preposterous. It has a 3-year time limit, which is ridiculous. Takes away the authority to go after non-ISIS terrorist groups, amazingly. And so you look at that, and then no enduring ground offensive. You do that to D-Day, we'd still be on the beaches. This guy doesn't get it.
So, Mike, why not then, as the Constitution says, put it in the hands of Congress? Have Congress come out with a clear declaration of war?
Because unless the president's on board with everything, David, it doesn't matter what you say. As Steve just said, it matters what you're doing. And we need a
But let me just stop you there. Is the military on board with what our commander-in-chief has said? I see a lot of military guys, some even still in their positions, disagree with the president on this.
You're right. And the reason is because you need a Clear, consistent, and coherent strategy that involves economics, that involves politics, and that involves the military. Our president has been gutting the military with his budget. So if the fact that he declares war isn't going to help us if he's gutting the military.
Well, Rich, it is true that a declaration we're putting the U.S. on a war footing there would extract costs from an American public that already have not seen much happen with their income over the past 10 years.
Yeah, that's true. The economy is beginning to recover. We're talking about a relatively small amount of money, though, to do everything we can to save Western civilization. And by the way, my good friend John Tamny put out a false argument here. This is not about building Jeffersonian democracy in the Middle East. That was the big flaw of George W. Bush. This is about getting rid of people who put the world in danger.
Well, John Tamny, beware of when somebody starts a sentence by saying, my good friend. But go ahead and respond to that.
Yeah, the insults are usually about to start flowing. But again, the talk was years ago that we had all these dangerous people in the Middle East. We've got Saddam out. We've got Gaddafi out. And it's still very dangerous. I think to presume that this time it's going to get much better is kind of naive. And then after that, all this talk about the incompetence of Obama and the incompetence of the Obama administration, I'll match you with that on any given day. But you then want this incompetent administration to make big foreign policy decisions that could involve American lives. I think the arguments here are wholly inconsistent.
Well, Sabrina, I got to say, as the parent of somebody in the military, I'm a little reluctant when I've seen all of the mistakes. Even Rick Unger admitted that this commander-in-chief has made serious blunders as commander-in-chief. I'm not sure I want to give him all that much more power over what happens to my son.
Yeah, and actually that's why I think that this has less to do with sort of declaring his war powers and having a conversation with Congress and sort of delineating what is the Obama doctrine. Up until now, it has been these half measures, and ultimately that is what is going to put people in harm's way, whether we're talking about our military or our civilians here at home. If we don't make some choices about what it is that we're doing and we're trying to accomplish, we're ultimately going to be leaving ourselves in much more danger.
All right, Rick, I know you're upset because John Tamny is stealing all of your thunder, but go ahead.
This show's undergoing metamorphosis, or I am, or John is. Look, I have to agree with my good friend Rich Carlgard. Look, you can't, first of all, you don't get to decide when you have to do something when the situation requires it. You guys may not like Obama. He's your president. He's the one who has to do it. That's number one. Number two, I agree with what Rich said earlier. We are not going to have a better opportunity to take this fight to the bad guys. Number three, let's stop with the religion stuff. These guys are evil. I don't care who they are, what they are. They kill little children. Somebody's got to kill them.
Well, they care about their religion, and their religion plays a part in their war strategy. It should play a part in our war strategy. But that's another argument. Steve, what about the economic costs of this? If we go all out, really do what the president says we're going to do, which is destroy ISIS, there is going to be a cost. Are Americans ready for that?
I think the Americans are. They don't like it, but they're ready to do it because they know they have to do it. And because we made mistakes in the past, there's no excuse not to do something now. They said in the 30s, appeasement. Oh, we made mistakes after World War I. World War I was a mistake. And so they ignored Hitler, ignored Mussolini, ignored Imperial Japan, and we nearly lost Western civilization. But so enough of it. We got to do something
It's
now.
enough to say the eventual costs will be greater, but the costs now, I don't know if Americans are ready for that.
If they had a real president, yes, they would, who could make the case for it like we did before World War II.
This is why Boehner was right in inviting Netanyahu to come speak, because Netanyahu is really the one person actually in the free world right now showing leadership.
There's so many kettles of fish we have opened this discussion. Unfortunately, we don't have time for it all. Coming up next, a word of caution to budget-cutting lawmakers. Be careful saying we need to tighten our nation's belt, because there's one union boss who says he's going to take off his belt and whip you with it. You got to hear this.
Now whip it into shape. Shape it up.